In just a few decades, humanity built weapons so powerful, they could end civilization in ours. And today, 9 countries hold that power, each with its own secret story, its own fears, and its own reasons. This is how every nuclear-armed nation got the bomb, including India. It all begins in the 1940s during World War II. The world's first nuclear weapons weren't built for power, they were built out of fear. The United States launched a top-secret program called the Manhattan Project, driven by the belief that Nazi Germany might be building an atomic bomb first. Scientists like J. Robert Oppenheimer worked under intense pressure, racing against time. In July 1945, the first nuclear test, Trinity, lit up the desert in New Mexico. Just weeks later, the United States dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. The world had changed forever. Nuclear weapons were no longer theory, they were reality. But the United States wouldn't stay alone for long. In 1949, the Soviet Union successfully tested its first atomic bomb. They had been secretly developing it, partly through espionage inside the Manhattan Project. This marked the true beginning of the Cold War nuclear arms race. 2 superpowers, both armed with weapons capable of destroying millions, began building more and more and more. Next came the United Kingdom. In 1952, Britain tested its first nuclear weapon. Why? Because it wanted to remain a global power and not depend entirely on the United States for security. The UK became the 3rd nuclear-armed nation. Then, in 1960, France joined the club. After facing insecurity during World War II and tensions in Europe, France decided it needed its own independent nuclear deterrent. They tested their first bomb in the Sahara Desert. 1964, China shocked the world. Despite being less industrialized at the time, China successfully detonated its first nuclear weapon. This was driven by geopolitical tensions, especially with the United States and the Soviet Union. China wanted to ensure it could defend itself without relying on anyone. Now we move to South Asia, where things become even more intense. India's nuclear journey began with a mix of scientific ambition and security concerns. After gaining independence in 1947, India invested heavily in nuclear research, officially for peaceful purposes. But things changed after the 1962 war with China and China's nuclear test in 1964. India realized it was in a dangerous neighborhood. In 1974, India conducted its first nuclear test, codenamed Smiling Buddha, officially. It was called a peaceful nuclear explosion, but the message was clear: India had the capability. However, India did not immediately declare itself a nuclear weapons state. For decades, India maintained strategic ambiguity. Then came 1998. In a series of tests known as Pokhran 2, India openly declared itself a nuclear weapons state. These tests demonstrated advanced capabilities and marked India's full entry into the nuclear club. But India's move triggered a chain reaction. Just weeks later, Pakistan conducted its own nuclear tests. Pakistan had been developing nuclear weapons for years, largely in response to India. The rivalry between the two nations made nuclear weapons a matter of survival in their eyes. By 1998, South Asia had become a nuclear flashpoint. Now let's talk about Israel, one of the most secretive nuclear powers in the world. Israel has never officially confirmed having nuclear weapons. However, it is widely believed that Israel developed them in the late 1960s, surrounded by hostile neighbors. Israel adopted a policy of nuclear ambiguity, either confirming nor denying. Then comes North Korea. North Korea's nuclear program began during the Cold War. But it wasn't until the 2000s that it became a reality. In 2006, North Korea conducted its first nuclear test. Unlike other nations, North Korea used nuclear weapons as a tool for regime survival. Despite heavy sanctions and global pressure, North Korea continued testing more powerful weapons, including hydrogen bombs. So today, the 9 nuclear-armed countries are the United States, Russia, the United Kingdom, France, China, India, Pakistan, Israel, and North Korea. But there's another layer to this story: the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, or NPT. Created in 1968, it aimed to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons. 5 countries, the US, Russia, UK, France, and China, officially recognized as nuclear states under this treaty. India, Pakistan, and Israel never signed the NPT. North Korea actually joined, but later withdrew. This creates a complicated global system where some countries are officially allowed to have nuclear weapons, while others are not. And yet, the reality is clear. Nuclear weapons still exist, thousands of them. The Cold War may be over, but the threat hasn't disappeared. Modern nuclear weapons are far more powerful than the ones dropped in 1945. Some can destroy entire cities in seconds. Others can be launched from submarines, making them nearly impossible to detect. So why do countries still keep them? The answer is deterrence. The idea that if you have nuclear weapons, no one will attack you, because the consequences would be catastrophic. The balance of fear called mutually assured destruction. It's also a fragile balance. One mistake, one miscalculation, one conflict escalating too far, and the consequences could be unimaginable. India, for example, follows a no first-use policy, meaning it promises not to use nuclear weapons unless attacked first. This is meant to reduce tensions, especially with Pakistan. However, not all countries follow this doctrine. And that's what makes the nuclear story so dangerous. It's not just about who has the weapons, it's about how they might be used. From secret labs in the 1940s, to superpower rivalries, to regional conflicts, the story of nuclear weapons is a story of fear, power, and survival. 9 countries, thousands of warheads, and a world that hopes they are never used again. But the story doesn't end there, because getting the bomb was only the beginning. What came next was even more dangerous. The race to make them faster, stronger, and impossible to stop. After the first atomic bombs, countries quickly moved to something far more powerful: hydrogen bombs. These thermonuclear weapons are hundreds of times stronger than the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The United States tested the first hydrogen bomb in 1952, and the Soviet Union followed just a year later. This wasn't just an upgrade, it was a terrifying leap. Soon, nuclear weapons were no longer just dropped from planes. They could be launched across continents in minutes. This led to the development of ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles. These missiles can travel thousands of kilometers and deliver nuclear warheads with deadly accuracy. Then came submarine-launched ballistic missiles, nuclear weapons hidden deep under the ocean, on submarines that are nearly impossible to detect. This created what experts call the nuclear triad: land, air, and sea-based weapons. It made nuclear deterrence even stronger, even more complex. During the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union built tens of thousands of nuclear weapons. At the peak, the world had over 60,000 nuclear warheads, enough to destroy humanity many times over. And there were moments when the world came dangerously close to nuclear war. In 1962, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, the United States and the Soviet Union stood on the edge of total destruction. Soviet nuclear missiles were discovered in Cuba, just 90 miles from the US coast. For 13 days, the world held its breath. One wrong move, and nuclear war could have started. In the end, diplomacy prevented disaster, but it showed just how fragile the balance really was. There were other close calls, 2 false alarms, technical errors, and miscommunications. In one famous incident in 1983, a Soviet officer named Stanislav Petrov chose not to report what appeared to be incoming US missiles. It turned out to be a false alarm. His decision may have prevented nuclear war. This is how close the world has come, without most people even knowing. Now let's return to India, because its nuclear journey didn't stop in 1998. After declaring itself a nuclear weapons state, India focused on building a credible deterrent. This includes developing delivery systems like Agni missiles, capable of reaching long distances. India also worked on submarine-based nuclear capabilities, completing its own version of the nuclear triad. At the same time, India has consistently advocated for global nuclear disarmament. It maintains that nuclear weapons should eventually be eliminated, but until then, it must ensure its own security. Pakistan, on the other hand, developed its nuclear doctrine differently. Unlike India's no first use, Pakistan has kept the option of using nuclear weapons first, especially in response to conventional military threats. This difference in strategy makes South Asia one of the most sensitive nuclear regions in the world. Now look at North Korea again. Its nuclear program is not just about defense, it's also about power on the global stage. Each missile test sends a message. Each nuclear test increases its leverage in negotiations. Despite international sanctions, North Korea has continued advancing its technology. Today, it claims to have missiles capable of reaching the United States. And then there's Israel, still silent, still ambiguous. Its nuclear policy is one of the most unique. By never officially confirming its arsenal, Israel avoids triggering regional arms races while still maintaining deterrence. It's a strategy built on uncertainty. But nuclear weapons aren't just about war. They also shape global politics in powerful ways. Countries with nuclear weapons often have greater influence on the world stage. They are harder to pressure, harder to invade, and often play key roles in international decision-making. At the same time, many countries have chosen a different path. Nations like Germany, Japan, and South Africa had the capability, or even the weapons, but decided to step away. South Africa is the only country in history to have built nuclear weapons and then voluntarily dismantled them. This proves something important. Nuclear weapons are not inevitable. They are a choice. Today, there are ongoing efforts to reduce nuclear risks. Treaties like New START between the United States and Russia aim to limit the number of deployed warheads. Other agreements try to prevent testing and slow down the spread of nuclear technology, but challenges remain. New technologies like hypersonic missiles are making nuclear weapons even harder to defend against. Cyber threats raise concerns about hacking into nuclear systems. And rising global tensions mean that the risk, while low, is never zero. So where does that leave us? We live in a world where nuclear weapons exist, but are rarely talked about. A world where peace depends not just on diplomacy, but on restraint, on decisions made in seconds that could affect millions of lives. From the deserts of New Mexico, to the test sites of Pokhran, to the hidden facilities across the world. The journey of nuclear weapons is a story still being written. And the most important question is not how countries got the bomb, it's whether humanity can survive having them at all.